Hello and welcome to the How Long to Beat podcast. Once again, I am Rick, joined by Alex.
Hello.
And Paula.
Hello.
And this week has been a quiet one. I've only finished 7 games, but we're going to talk about what I and everyone else has completed. It's been a weird one. We're going to talk about what I and everyone else has beaten, retired, currently been playing. We're going to talk Pokemon, or Pokebronc, if you will, because it's not good. It's nearly as bad as that pun. And we'll see what we think about all that. And then we've got the first game of a new round of the brand new format of How Long to Beat The Game.
No, I just wait until I hear how.
Yeah, one day I shall build that trust back, and then I shall crush it again. So
that day will not be today, though.
But not today. Why don't I jump in first of all? I actually need to try and sort of remember a lot of what, because it's been a minute since we've recorded. We had talked about sort of beatings. We had a guest episode, and then there's a new game plus that's just come out, and now we're here. So the first game I beat, which helpfully I didn't have a lot to say about even when I remembered playing it, is Yu Yu Hakusho, Makyou Toitsusen. I think I've butchered that, but it is one of the first games that Treasure ever made. It's a Mega Drive one-on-one fighter, and it's in Japanese. And I didn't have a fucking clue what I was doing. Who I was playing as, don't know what the story was, but I beat it. I got through to the extent that these games ever had a campaign. It felt good for a fighter, as someone who knows nothing about one-on-one fighters, really. I had a fun enough half hour just bashing through this on an emulator. Do I recommend it? I don't know. Anyway, I don't have anything more on that one. The next game I beat was Transiruby for Switch. So this is from the developers of Kamiko. It is a 2D... I wouldn't call it a puzzle platformer, really. It's like it's an action game. It doesn't really fit any prescribed thing. You're going around. It's kind of a collectathon. You have to collect these gems to open the doors to the next area. There's technically a story. The story doesn't really matter. It's a fun, shortish, well put together action game. Great podcast game. Easy thing to sort of just switch off to and zen out to. I really, really enjoyed this one. It's one that we played a demo of in a Next Fest. It's got nice chunky pixel art. Everything's tuned quite well. It all feels good in terms of motion, combat. There's a reasonable amount of secret stuff to find. It's a little bit Metroidvania-y in that there's a few things that you can only collect with power-ups down the line. I suppose a Metroidvania is kind of what it is, but it felt more like a platformer than a Metroidvania. There's only a couple of power-ups that you actually get because it's not that long a game. And they're not really super revolutionary stuff. I suppose the one thing that was kind of interesting was that you have a melee attack, that's your standard attack. You also have a gun. That gun has limited ammo, which you can rebuild by killing enemies. It can also be used to freeze enemies. And what you can do is by freezing enemies, when you attack them, they have a chance of dropping a health pack. So there's this risk reward where you know that certain buttons will require so many shots to activate. So there's this balancing act of how many shots do I need to conserve versus how badly do I need to risk those shots for a chance at getting life off an enemy. And that does lend some weight to moment decision making. It is a really good game. It's tricky because 2 weeks on, I don't feel like there's all that much to say about it beyond it's good. And that feels like an indictment on it in a way that I don't mean it to. It is a really good game, but it is the kind of game where you play it, you enjoy it, and then you just kind of move on. It doesn't really play on your mind all that much afterwards. There's not a lot to play on your mind. It's a bit popcorny in that sense.
That sounds good because I really want to play this one.
I was going to say, are you planning to? I think you should. I think it's the kind of game that you would really enjoy, particularly sort of between some of the bigger stuff that you've been tackling. And it's a different one to the Castlevania stuff in that there's a lot less to manage. Like you have a couple of resources and that's kind of it. But yeah, I really like it. I don't feel like I'm doing a good job of conveying that I really liked it, but I did really like it. I liked it a lot more than my next completion, which is Minoria. So this is a spiritual successor, if you will, to the Momodora games. They've gone for a 3D cel-shaded, pseudo hand-drawn art style, and they've moved away from like a stock Metroidvania to being much more of a 2D Souls-like. It's not a good game. It's not even necessarily bad, but it feels horribly unbalanced. The graphics are the first big downturn. They look wonderful in screenshots. I think I mentioned this when we spoke about it last time, but in motion, awful, horrible, really not a good look. Very amateurish, I think is probably what I'd say. The combat, and whether this is like meant to be a Souls-like thing, I don't know, but it didn't feel right. Enemies take, even the most stock enemy takes 3 or 4 or 5 hits and can kill you in as little as 2. The placement is quite mean. The map isn't particularly easy to pass. The boss fights were relatively good, albeit, a couple of them felt, again, quite cheap. It's a hard one to get a bead on because, on the one hand, I really, really, really enjoyed the developers' other games in the Momodora series, forgive me. And there's a degree of disappointment that it wasn't in a similar vein. But I also recognize that maybe this is just aimed at a completely different demo and it isn't for me. Nevertheless, I had quite a bad time with it. I didn't enjoy it. Don't feel like I can recommend it. Maybe if you're the kind of person who's loved a game like Salt and Sanctuary and you want more of that kind of fix, maybe this scratches that itch. But for me, this was just a phenomenal disappointment, ultimately. It also does that horrible thing at the end where you get a binary pretend choice that makes you feel like there is no ending rather than there are 2 endings. And that's just it's not a good way to end your game. Especially when the story was so superfluous to start with. Anyway, next game I played, much more of a story focus on this one, is a game called Adios. This is a really, really not obscure, but like under-discussed game. Have either of you come across this one at all?
No.
So the concept is this. You are a pig farmer who has a side hustle feeding mafia targets to those pigs for money. And one day, your mafia contact comes with some more body parts, and you tell him this is the last time that you're ever going to do it. You've decided you're done. And the whole game revolves around your day with that mafia contact, him trying to convince you to change your mind, you being adamant that you won't, both of you knowing that if your mind can't be changed, you're going to die. You know too much. You can't be allowed to live without being involved. I wanted to like this game a lot more than I did. The back of the box concept, incredible. The graphics, quite the opposite, albeit it's a 2-man team and they've gone for probably more than they really could do. It's a very ambitious 3D art style. The animations are what let it down rather than the models. Lip syncing's not quite right. Movements are quite stiff and janky. And there are a couple of moments that were supposed to be quite emotionally affecting, but for me at least, were detracted from by what I was actually seeing on screen. The writing's really good. There's an interesting layered story and something that this game does that I absolutely fucking love and I really want more games to do. There are some dialogue choices where it will give you choices and you will choose them and your character won't say them. And it's a way of almost evoking in gameplay that idea of I want to say something, but I can't. And it only did it a couple of times, but every time it did it, I found it really, really effective. On the whole, hard recommend in the sense that it's just over an hour long. Mechanically, there's not a lot to it. You could watch a playthrough. and get basically exactly the same experience. It's a static story, and I think at like £15, it's quite a big ask for what you're getting now. I got it in a bundle. I think in a bundle or a discounted sale price, if that elevator pitch sounds interesting to you, the story is worth experiencing as long as you go in with your eyes wide open to the deficiencies of this setup. It's a game where the lack of size in that team really does diminish it, and you can see where they've had to pare things back and cut corners and make things fit within the constraints that they're working in. And that's a shame because it does take away some from the game. I am glad I experienced it. I'm not sure that I could recommend it. I think deep sale price, to repeat myself, it's worth taking a look. And actually, to be fair, I think for both of you, it's the kind of game that you would really vibe with. I think for our little audience where there's more of an openness to trying different things with these kinds of games, it's probably something you're going to be more receptive to. And again, to repeat myself again, the story is really good. And that but is the problem. Next game, or actually, do you want to jump in with a couple, Alex, and we'll break these up? Because I actually think I've got quite a lot to say about the next three.
Sure, yeah, why not? So I beat Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, which I actually beat a while ago now.
Yeah, it's tricky.
That's what it is, right? It's just a great game. I thought I was going to maybe play through the DLCs. I was like, nah, I'm fine. I just wanted that core experience. The DLCs are fine, but it's like I just didn't feel any need to kind of extend my playthrough, you know? I do really love the way that this game, like, it paces itself very well, I think. And in particular, like, there's basically two zones that you go through, right? Like, it's open world in a sense, but it's kind of like open world zones, I guess, where you have like one map and then there's another map that you can kind of enter into. And that first map is really all about sort of teaching you the Nemesis system and kind of getting you used to like the traversal and how things work. And it's not like handholdy or anything, but it is really just like showing you things that you can do. And like I think we talked about this with Nalb actually, where it's like that that sort of introductory campaign moment with Ratbag very much is like teaching you one technique of like dominating and control that you can have that will become a thing that opens up to you in the second part. And the second part, I found it's just very fun because now you're able to dominate and like send orcs against each other and like really mess around in the ranks and have like, you know, commanders that you do your beck and will. And that was the one where I was suddenly like, didn't really give a shit about any of the campaign stuff. I was just off doing my own thing, which is what the real strength of this game is, where it manages to, because I guess a big issue, and it doesn't fully sidestep this, but I think it does sidestep it the most when you compare it to similar open world games of this ilk, where you kind of realize that like you're playing a game where it's just like, okay, this is open world, but you got to go here, you win. Right. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess it's open world, but that open world is really just there. And the actual story is, you know, through all of those little checkpoints that you have to go through.
Linear path with more scenery, basically.
Exactly. Like, you know, Breath of the Wild might be one of the games that does this as well pretty well, but at the same time, it is still just go to those four things to win. But at the same time, you kind of can't fully like I'm saying, you can't really fully get away from that because you need something, right? And so I think both of these games do it very well. Where Shadow Mordor is like, okay, yeah, you know, you're gonna have to go do a couple things, but you can do that however you want, like, and have a good time, and like you can create all your own fun. And you have multiple different ways of achieving this one goal. And what I really love is that, like, eventually, you know, you do a couple campaign missions and then it's like, okay, well now you need to, you know, convert these 5 people. And there are a myriad of ways of doing that. And there are absolutely no like required areas for you to go to do this. You can do it any way you want, have fun. And they've built it up so that you have so many tools at this point, that when you get to the time where you're allowed to just kind of go off and do your own thing, you really know multiple ways of doing it. And it's like I don't need help anymore. I know what I can go do. And so I think it's one of the best paced games that I've played in a long time, where like when it ended, I was like, yeah, that was the right time. Like that was good. You didn't overstay your welcome. There's a ton of shit. You can pour more hours into this game, but even then, there is an upper limit to the amount of stuff that you can do within it. It's like, as much as I love Yakuza, right? You could spend like, I think, your entire life in a Yakuza game, which can be nice for some, and I think is wonderful because they create such lived-in worlds there. But sometimes you're a little like, fuck me, okay, I just want to, just want to play the game. And this one does a really good job at streamlining that. So yeah, if you've never played this game, like I highly recommend it, because while it is probably the best Lord of the Rings game, or like the two of them together, I would say, it's also just one of the greatest open world style games that has been made, honestly, in the kind of vein of Assassin's Creed. We all know them, right? The Outpost Tower games. It's probably the best of it, which is funny because it feels a little bit like it was like, oh yeah, okay, hey Assassin's Creed, I see what you do, and like here, we'll do what you've been wanting to do, but better. It's like, fuck.
It's an interesting one time-wise, in the sense that I think, as good as the Nemesis system was, it was seen as derivative when it came out, even. Like, for the most part. But looking back, like you say, it is one of the better examples of that kind of game design.
Yeah, and you realize that it's like actually significantly unique compared to all of them, especially now with how many have come out. You're like, well, no one's been able to do what they did.
Nope.
And it's
Not
like,
even then with the sequel, arguably.
yeah. Though I think the sequel had a lot of what was it? Like a lot of studio interference, but then once that was able to back off, the final product that you play now is very fun. But if you were there at the time, it was a bit of a nightmare. But that's one of those examples of like, as time has come on, the game is much more fun. It's a bit of a Bethesda game.
Ooh.
Let's not love Bethesda, but we know how that works. Anyway, so that was Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. I had a great time with it. It's one of the closest to like a perfect game for me as games can get. Like there are issues with it, obviously, but it's just like one of those things where you're like, but even so, extremely enjoyable. Even with the blocky, funny design of the characters. The Cro-Magnon design, I'll call it, big men with big brows. I also beat Pentiment, the new game from Obsidian, on Game Pass now. This game is fucking awesome. It probably rivals Disco Elysium in its writing, and in its conceptions. I mean, Disco Elysium is a special, interesting thing. But what I would actually say, and this is what's interesting, is like Disco Elysium is one of the best written games of all time. Probably is the best written game of all time. But it's also fucking verbose. Or like sometimes it's like you could shut up for a few minutes, Disco Elysium, but like it's like a little too much. This one is incredibly well written and it's incredibly concise, and it helps the fact that it's told through dialogue, right? To give you a little bit of context of what this game is, it's set in 16th century Bavaria, I think, but it's in the Holy Roman Empire. So think of yourself as in like Germanic lands, we'll put it that way. You're in this town called Tassing, and Tassing is the city underneath Kirsau Abbey. So there's a big abbey up there with a convent and with nuns and with monks. And you play as Andreas Mahler. So Andreas is this apprentice, and he's in his what are called his wandering years. This was like a really common thing in this time, because I'm going to put on my historian hat for a second. Society used to be like, capitalism wasn't a thing, right? So society was run through guilds, right? So you had craftsmen. So essentially, you could, if you wanted to become something like a blacksmith, construction, working in masonry, or an artist, you had to apprentice, and you would typically apprentice under an individual, but eventually you would also be off in that you'd have to create what was called like your masterwork, and that could be different for all different guilds and trades, right? And so essentially you're creating something that would deem you to become a master. And so you would have what are called like the wandering years, which are years where you kind of go around and you can learn from different people and you can kind of experience and see different things before becoming a master and kind of working on your vocation fully. And so Andreas, when we meet him, is in the midst of that and he's working on his masterwork. And he's at Kirsa Abbey doing illuminated manuscripts. And illuminated manuscripts were these really, like, it's within ancient books. You would see, like, all these older books and Bibles and whatnot. You would see these really beautiful illustrations that have, like, the kind of the gold leaf and, like, the kind of look at those are called, like, illustrated. Oh no, I literally just said it. Illuminated manuscripts, right? Because, like, the idea is that, like, there's illustrations, but they kind of literally glow. And so at Curacao, there's like one of the last bastions of this practice, because obviously the printing press has come along at this point. And so the printing press, revolutionized everything, because you can imagine creating an illuminated manuscript. You'd have these monks who are literally writing the script and then others who are illustrating them. It would take years to create one book, right? And they're incredible works of art, but they're expensive and they take forever. And so obviously with the printing press coming along, that shit was kind of falling to the wayside, right? So you're kind of at this town at a moment when things are really changing, and this abbey is like really under a lot of pressure. And the historical accuracy within this game is incredible. Like they worked with historians on this thing, and like the director, he did his first degree was in history of this time period. So like he loves this stuff. It's like this is a big passion project for him. Josh Sawyer, I think it was. Yeah, and it's a small team who did this, like 13 people, I think. So it looks like a medieval painting. Like that's the art style within it. And what's really cool is that each of the characters, when they speak, they're sort of written in like the way they would write. So like, for instance, the local printing, like the man who runs the printing press, his speech bubbles are like a printing press. You'll hear the and like it comes on, and like you'll actually see at first how it used to be done, where it's like comes on black and then it's flipped up. And sometimes you'll see typos, and then you'll see like a little and it like gets fixed as you're going along. And it's like really, really kind of cute and beautifully stylistic. And the kind of overarch of this, like there's not a lot of like game to it per se, because again, it is a narrative adventure game, right? So this is in your kind of Ghost Trick worlds, Ace Attorney, like almost visual novel, but more involved than a visual novel, because you make quite a few decisions and you get to move around, right? It's not like you're just like pressing like to advance the story. You actually have to like explore the town. Because
like 13 Sentinels-esque thing.
Yeah, I think that is actually the best way of looking at it. It's like 13 Sentinels without the combat sim. And it's more linear, obviously. But yes, exactly. 13 Sentinels, I think, is a really good way to look at how this works. Even stylistically, in terms of like the 2D playing kind of thing, I think that's the best. That's probably the best comparison. But there's a murder that happens, and so basically someone gets accused and you know that can't be the person. But what's really interesting about this game is that it's a murder mystery, but you will never, ever know who actually committed the murders. You will accuse people and they will be sentenced, but you will never find out if they were the one who did it or not, because it's not really what the game's about. The game is very much about the relationships that you build with the people of the town, and there isn't a larger overarching mystery that is quite satisfying, and they will reveal things to you. It's not like they're just gonna be like, who knows? But part of the point is like, when you think about it, even today, this is a thing, but like, how are you gonna find out who actually did it, right? Like there's no, unless someone sees it, especially back then, what are you gonna run a DNA test? Get fucking, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing you can do. All you can do is create a case against someone and convince the people, right? So it takes place over 25 years, and you get to watch this town grow up. Yeah, so there's 3 acts, and so you have your first act, and then there's a big time jump, and then there's another big time jump. So you get to watch these people grow. And it's interesting because as I started playing the game, I was a little more, and like you have to decide kind of, especially in the first part, like who you're gonna have dinner with, and like it splits it up based on the way that medieval life was split up, which I think is really wonderful. And you get to learn a lot about how the medieval day was run and how we are actually. We always like to talk about, oh, the dark ages or whatever, and you're like, they had way more rest than we did. Life was like rough and tough, but we have a particularly worse way of living at this point. Way better in some ways, way worse in others. Everyone broke for like to eat multiple times throughout the day. It's wonderful. But anyway, so it's a really it's a really beautiful game. And when I first started, I didn't talk to as many people, right? Like I would like kind of be like, no, I want to just keep going and like learn the story. But then as I played the game, like I got really attached to the people in this town, and they're very real, and they have these wonderful conversations with you, and you get to really learn them, and you get to really role play the person that you're playing as quite nicely, and you get to really shape how they respond and who they are as an individual. And so there are some like dialogue checks moments, but they're not like, I mean, this is the guy who made Fallout New Vegas, right? Like, it's not like New Vegas where, you have like, oh, you have speech 50 or whatever, and you just pass. It's like, no, if you have to convince someone of something, the game basically pays attention to just like how you responded and how you act with these people, right? Were you kind of a dick to one person? Well, they might not listen to you. Did you actually sort of support them in this area? Well, then they might actually be more willing to listen to you, right? Like it literally is just tracking what are your relationships with these individuals. And yeah, it's a really, really magical game that is so unique in its presentation. And it's like the procession to Cavalry. No, it's not Cavalry. I can't remember. God damn it. It's that stupid extra little word that they have in there. It's like that game.
Ruh-roh.
Except it's not, what do you call it? It's not overly humorous. It's a funny game, but it's a serious game as well. Right? And it deals with some very serious themes, especially with the peasantry. And if you know anything about this time period in Europe, you might know kind of what's coming a little bit within this, because there's definitely some kind of unrest that's going on within the world at that time. So as there always is, right? Anyway, yeah, that's Pentiment. I super recommend it. It's on fucking Game Pass. It's a no-brainer. Like, especially because you're gonna know like super quick if this is a game for you or not. It's one of those ones where it's just like after, like, I really think after the first like 10-15 minutes, you'll probably realize if you're kind of going to be in this for the long haul or not. And so like, I just recommend trying it out, especially if you just want a really, really strong narrative, with some really kind of wonderful people. And then you get to watch, little kids that you'll meet grow up and like meet their older selves in it. And like, it's just really cool. It's really cool.
Nice. A couple of things I do want to throw out on that. Obviously, you name checked the, I think the lead writer, the guy who sort of had the history degree and was like influential in setting it all up. He recently did an interview on the Friends Per Second podcast. Really insightful. It was what kind of reminded me the game existed, and it is what I'm interested in getting to at some point. Interestingly, he also name checked the procession to Calvary in that interview. And I can't remember if it was that interview or somewhere else. They cite, i.e. Obsidian, Game Pass as one of the big factors of a game like this being viable at all, which is definitely an interesting take. Obviously, I still have my misgivings about Game Pass as a path forward for the industry, just holistically. Having said that, I am still taking advantage of like a year-long free entitlement that I get for it. So I'm kind of having my cake and eating it at the moment. But
I will say it's interesting because I remember I saw him talking about an interview too where he said that's actually the only reason his game got greenlit, because he brought it to the top brass and he was like, listen, this is a game that sure shit won't sell a lot, only needs a couple people to make, but it'll look great for a Game Pass. And like his bosses were like, yeah, sounds good. And then Xbox was like, fuck yeah, sounds great. So he was like, there you go. Yeah, it is neat because like he had been thinking about this game for a while, but he had actually shelved it until they got bought by Microsoft, and then was like, well.
I'm not going to pick the Game Pass scab now, but like, yes, that is an interesting wrinkle to the creation of this game.
Well, there's always good and bads, right?
Yeah, pros and cons all the way around. Right, I'll jump back in because I've got a couple more now that I've had that little break for me. Little Noah, Scion of Paradise. This is one I name checked. I think is a game I was playing when we spoke to Nalb last week. Literally beat it the next day. This is an interesting roguelike. For those of you who missed that conversation, the big sort of novelty or the big USP for this roguelike is that you pick up characters who you can slot freely into a single combo that you have on your main attack button, or have as special skills, or can sort of buff you passively in your inventory. From a systems perspective, this game is phenomenal. You can tell that some of the environments are a little bit samey. There's certain areas that they cut corners, but I think they cut corners in the right places. And on the whole, the actual game itself, it's one of those games that I couldn't put down until I'd finished it. Maybe ever so slightly on the easy side. There's maybe a little bit of wonkiness in the difficulty curve. By that I mean I was stuck on. There's like 15 levels that you have to clear in one single run in order to beat the game. There's an element of path branching, and a couple of those levels are boss fights only, but they're split into 3 discrete chunks of 5. For the first few hours I was playing, I was stuck in that first chunk of 5 pretty solidly. I don't think I was ever stuck once in the second chunk of 5. Once I got to the last chunk, on my second attempt in that last chunk, I got to the final boss. On the third or fourth attempt at the final boss, I completed the whole game. And that's not necessarily a criticism per se. It's just that for me, that balance didn't pitch sort of linearly. The game's got a lot of replay value as well, if you are so inclined, because there's lots of little unlockables and achievements and like meters you can max out far beyond the base experience. There's a new harder version, there's challenge modes, stuff I plan to come back to at some point, but for now I'm very, very happy having cleared the base game. It's really, really good, and it's a crying shame that more people aren't talking about this game. It's not very expensive. It's on basically everything, although I have to say I really, really enjoyed playing it on Switch. I think perfect pick up and put down sort of game for that. I would recommend it to anyone. I think it's a really, really good game. Even manages to squeeze like a pretty competent, albeit, not breaking any mold story in there. And I actually quite enjoyed the story, but in spite of its minor limitations, the whole package is really, really good. And that was a wonderful little discovery. Always nice when you find those ones that people aren't really talking about and they just come out of nowhere and surprise you. So anyone who's listening, both of you, absolutely check this game out.
Nice.
Penultimate game I completed this week, Steel Assault. For the Switch, this is a game that's published by Tribute, but it's like a solo dev. It is a little bit like Shovel Knight. It's like a throwback to an older era of games. In this instance, like your Mega Drive 3-button action games. It's good, but very, very short. Certain elements of it are a little bit thin. I don't mind that because it's a single dev effort, but it's something to bear in mind if you're paying full whack for this game. The pixel art is fucking fantastic. Like the game looks and sounds, to be fair, incredible. In motion, it feels really good, really authentic to the memory that you would have of playing those kinds of games. And the difficulty probably matches up to that sort of thing as well. It's very punishing, albeit with more generous checkpoints than any games at the time would have had. Despite being short, it does at certain points feel a little bit of a slog. It also does quite an interesting thing where, as well as your attack and your jump, your third button's this like bi-directional grapple hook thing, somewhere between a zip line and a Bionic Commando-esque grapple hook. And it's blended really well into the gameplay. So you can shoot it in 8 directions. You get to aim it at anything. If it's like a physical object, it will grab to it. In the scenery, obviously, not enemies. And there's various areas and boss patterns and enemy patterns generally where you are encouraged and in some cases required to take advantage of it. And it gives a real interesting spin on what is otherwise quite a straightforward setup. This is definitely a sale pickup. I really, really enjoyed it, but I think for a game of that kind of length, it's hard to say just go out and buy this game and experience it unless you absolutely need that kind of experience right now, sort of thing. But it was good, and I did overall enjoy it in spite of its limitations. The last one, have you played Haven Park yet, Paula? I know you have, Alex.
I haven't, but I am looking at it, and it looks a little bit like a third high in the sense of like the perspective and the graphics.
Oh, it's heavily
Yeah,
inspired
I
by
was
that.
reading the I was reading the reviews right now, and everyone says if you like a short hike, you will like this one.
I for the most part, I would agree with that. It's what in the UK we would call maybe a B-Tech short hike. B-Techs are like the lesser equivalent of our 16 to 18 A levels. So it's like it's a lesser short hike.
Yeah.
Not massively lesser, and it does some things different. So where short hike is focused singularly on reaching the top of the mountain, while you do have that same objective in Haven Park, you are also encouraged to maintain and find all of the camps on the park and rebuild them. There's a degree of city building to it, resource gathering in a way that a short hike never expected of you. I actually found the focus of a short hike much more appealing, much more enjoyable. Some of this speaks to my own sensibilities. I find like rebuilding and designing your environment in the way that Haven Park asks you to quite tedious, and I don't really get a lot from it. And so that aspect really didn't speak to me. I very much min-maxed. I was building like barbecues on every camp because it literally required one wood and one metal. And you could maximize what you needed for those parks with a minimal amount of resources. And I didn't really fucking care because I wasn't going to go back to them. But if you're the kind of person who wants to tick off all the items in the notebook, it gives you a lot more than a short hike gives you.
Also, if you're an Animal Crossing fan, I think.
Yes, yeah, and some of that speaks to your sensibility. Short hike is undoubtedly the better game. There's no question. Yeah. But if you play short hike and you want a similar fix, you can't really go far wrong with Haven Park. I did find the story tried a little bit too hard for me. It was very obvious from the word go where they were going, without spoiling anything. Whereas with a short hike, that the story of that had a lot more of a punch because it caught you by surprise. And it was just better told. There was a bit more to it. Everything was a bit more built around it. With Haven Park, there's like 3 cutscenes, and the story's told basically entirely through those. The flavor text that you get from camp goers is all just about various things you can find in the environment and stuff like that. So yeah, Haven Park, good, but not great. Very much in the vein of a short hike. Yeah, and you can. It's quite cheap even before discount. So I think I paid half price for it on the eShop. I know you played it on PC, Alex, but I was like, I want to get this on Switch. I will wait until it's on sale on Switch, and then I will get it, and then I will play it. You know, I'm happy with it. It was a good couple of hours of entertainment, but it just made me want to play a short hike again, which is the frustrating part because it just doesn't live up to it as similar as it is in some ways to it. Right, I'm going to shut up now. That's all of my completions, and by extension, that's all of our completions. Because although you haven't completed anything, Paula, you have got a retirement. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, it's just a little tiny little retirement that I have over here, and that is Pokeballs. As I previously said, it doesn't really have a story like or if it does have an overarching story, I didn't find it. So since it doesn't really guide you to anything, I just got bored after a while. Even though it was fun to like explore around and catch more Pokemon and stuff like that, it didn't really vibe with me in a way. So that's why I retired. I do recommend it to people who are more into that open world aspect of just exploring and try to do your own thing and telling your own story. But it isn't for me, like, at all.
Fair enough.
I guess
So,
right,
I
do
can
you,
jump
do
in.
you,
Who
oh,
wants
sorry,
to
go on.
go?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to go through for yours?
Yeah, I retired Frog Detective the entire mystery because I just don't like it at all. It's not a game. It's a curiosity. It's cute. I just don't care. I was like,
So you might say
Yeah.
it was a tadpole underwhelming.
Oh God, yes, yes, it was.
No.
But it's just like it's not a game, right? Like, and I get that. Like, I'm down for this sort of, jokey mystery. Like, he's not actually solving mysteries thing. But like, when it's so transparently, go walk there, talk to that person, get that thing, bring that thing to that person, do this thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that like, it's like in in Link's Awakening, you've got the big trade quest, right? But the big trade quest is a part of this larger game where you go through dungeons and you do your fights and you do your puzzles and you do all this other stuff. And then you have this fun trade quest. But when all your game is the trade quest, it's really fucking boring. I was just not a fan. And like the writing wasn't doing enough for me. It's cute and everything, but like at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, okay, so you made this cute little thing. Cool, I guess. I don't know. I feel cynical about it, but I just don't give a fuck. Like, as I was playing it, I was just like, I just don't give a fuck about this. And that's fine. Some people, I think, will play this and will fucking love it. Like, I think there are some where this game is going to just, like, hit everything that you want. It's going to be quirky, and it's just all the quirk that you need, and you're going to be like, yeehaw. But what it feels like to me is that maybe I'm just getting old and jaded now, but it felt very, like, my age millennial kind of, like, humor, which I'm just fucking over at this point. Like the overly meta humor, I'm just fucking over it. I'm like, can you just make compelling worlds and be funny in that sense? And it's like, nah, we're just gonna make something that's nonsensical entirely. And we all like dancing. Okay, whatever. So that's how I felt a little bit. It's like, yeah. Ugh.
Which is a shame because it's one I was quite looking forward to playing. It looks like a vibe.
You might like it. Like I said, you might vibe. You know what? Okay, here's how to play this game. Get high and then put it on. Because then it's perfect. All right? Be high as fuck. I don't know. Do some shrooms or something and you'll have a great time with this. But weed will be enough and just you'll have a fun time. But if you're not inebriated while playing this game, you're probably just going to be like, okay, sure. That's how I feel. I don't know. God damn it. I don't want to dig into too much into this, but it's like Chicory, right? Like I love Chicory and Chicory's cute, right? But Chicory creates this world that is like lived in with these people. And like, I know what you blasted through that game. You hardly spoke to anyone.
This is the interesting thing, right? Because Chicory really spoke to you. I thought Chicory was pretty mid.
Which is why I feel like if you don't like Chicory, I don't know what the fuck you're going to think of this game. Because Chicory is an actual game. This is just a walking sim.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah.
Because like Chicory is like this game, but with gameplay and like realized characters. So I don't know what the fuck you're going to think of this one. It might hit you right. I don't know. It might hit you just on the perfect day and with the right vibes. But anyway,
maybe we'll find out soon. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it's on Game Pass, so you might as well check it out. It's only like an hour or so.
I've already got it downloaded.
Yeah, there you go. I also retired Lord of the Rings Tactics because I got what I needed from it. I just wanted to try it out, and it was just a little too slow for me, and it's actually quite challenging. And I was like, no, I'm not ready to be challenged by this game. You know what I'm saying? Like there are some games you play where you're like, yeah, I'm in this for the challenge, man. You boot up your Elden Ring and you're like, let's go. But when you pull out your Lord of the Rings Tactics game, you're not like, yeah, let's get ready for some intense combat. No, you're like, I want to just play some fucking tactical gameplay as Gandalf. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for brain-breaking intensity. So yeah. Anyway, those are the two that I retired. I'm certain for some, they have their core audiences. Fraud Detective probably more than Tactics, but I'm good. What about you, Rick? You retired Mind Scanners. I feel like I've heard of this one.
You probably have. It's been on Game Pass, and at the time of
Uh,
this episode going live, it will have gone. But
okay.
it was leaving a few days ago, and it's one that I'd wanted to play since I started the trial. I went through a list of what was
Oh,
on
yeah,
Game
that
Pass
one.
at that time and made a list of games. I described Haven Park as a B-Tech, a short hike. This is a B-Tech Papers, Please, but in a much more negative way. And the comparison's inescapable. This is a game where you work a monotonous administrative job, in this instance, administering this game's equivalent of like is it Dunning-Kruger tests they call them in Blade Runner?
Yes.
But like to find out if people are sane or insane, and then you have these various vapid mini games to treat said insanity if you find it. It doesn't strike the same successful sort of pitch in terms of writing that Papers, Please did. It's much less engaging than Papers, Please was. It's also much more padded and bloated and longer than Papers, Please was. Papers, Please was like a 5-6 hour playthrough that I blasted through. I could not put that game down. By contrast, I got to day 12 of Mind Scanners after about an hour, and Googled to find out how many more days I'd have to get through. I found out it was 42, and I decided that I wasn't in for that. So once you've hit like day 4 or 5, every day's the fucking same. You have this really annoying arbitrary timer thing, which I kind of get the design rationale. They want you to feel a little bit under pressure when you're doing their shitty mini games, but it doesn't really elevate a sense of tension. It's just an annoyance. Doubly so when as much as 40% of your time counter is taken up just by traveling to whoever it is you're dealing with. And then before you can actually do your mind scanning, like treaty thingy, you have to read these little bits of flavor text and have like a best guess at which multiple choice answer it wants you to glean from it. And if you get any of those wrong, you lose another 5% of your time. It just gets an absolute mess. It's really, really not good gameplay. Yeah, again, to repeat myself, which is becoming a theme this week, gameplay and writing just not good enough to sustain what they're trying to do. I quite liked the setting. I did read some reviews afterwards, and the setting was something that was quite heavily criticized. I thought the setting was the only interesting aspect of this game. The art was okay. The music was okay. Yeah, and the things that matter the most really, really let it down. So I suppose my wait for a good cyberpunk sort of first-person narrative static adventure continues, because Divination wasn't much good either, and that was a similar kind of idea. But yes, do not recommend this. Just go and play Papers, Please again. Yeah.
It is
which
a
takes
very
us
good
neatly.
game.
It's a great game, and that takes us neatly onto our playing. Paula, why? Or in fact, actually, Alex, I want to know a little bit about Return to Monkey Island. In fact, I want to know about all your games. You've got like a complete new slate this week.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Return to Monkey Island is excellent so far. They do this really lovely little scrapbook thing that lets you like click through and like basically Guybrush has like made a scrapbook about his old adventures, and it's like really cute. And also the art style, I think, was horribly represented in the like the marketing coming up to it, because once you actually sit down with it, it's gorgeous and it looks really beautiful in movement, and it's quite wonderful. I think it's just like, because even when I was watching it in trailers, it just looked off, and I think it really requires that higher fidelity of like your own kind of computer, and then like seeing it as it's intended in terms of like, because like it'll do these wonderful things where like it'll zoom in on their like faces for moments and like it cuts through. It's very cartoony, and it also somehow like, it's weird because it somehow feels just like correct for this world a little bit. Like it feels to me like The Secret of Monkey Island. And like to be clear, like I've beaten The Secret of Monkey Island. Like I've beaten that one. I think I beat The Secret of Monkey Island. I think I beat the second one as well. And I never really played though I think it was like the Tales of Monkey Island or something, like the 3D ones that
The
came later.
Telltale one, yeah.
Yeah, Telltale. Was it Telltale or just like that style at least?
No, it was Telltale.
It was
So
Telltale?
there was 2 Monkey Islands that were made by the original team. Then
Yeah.
there were either
5
2 or
episodes.
3 further sequels, and then there was a 5-episode Telltale episodic series.
Right. Yeah. So I played the first.
And as
2.
I understand it, this starts where the first 2 left off.
I think it actually kind of goes with all of them. It's basically he's older now and he's got a kid and or kids. Maybe just one. I don't know. Yeah, he's got one kid. So anyway, regardless, it's like it's much further into the future, and like it's finishing the entirety of it. And to be honest, like the Monkey Island game, I don't know. Like you're there for the individual stories. You're not there for the interconnecting stories. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like each story is just really fun on its own. And again, the writing in this is wonderful, fully voice acted. And so there's actually not really any like I haven't really seen it. There's no dialogue boxes or anything. It's just them talking, and it's quite impressive. I think there's ways to turn on subtitles and stuff, but I've just left it off because the voice acting is so well done that you're like, no, I think I'm just gonna leave it like this. There's 2 modes that you could do. There's a casual mode and a hard mode. I think this is a great idea because basically the way it works, I've picked the hard mode because the hard mode is all it means is that like in casual mode, there are less steps to solve for the puzzles. If you've played any of these games, you know what it's like. Some of the puzzles are a fucking nightmare. Obviously, I think they've probably even simplified things more throughout this, but in hard mode, it just means more like you're playing it kind of as it's intended. And I think in general, I would recommend the hard mode to most people, especially anyone who's played an adventure game, just because I think if you were to play the casual mode, you're going to find the pacing to be a bit off, because I think you're going to essentially, when you hit a puzzle, you're going to solve it really fast. And so you're going to feel like, I think you're getting to like just chunks of dialogue constantly, right? Whereas in the hard mode, you're going to have more of that time of like trying to figure out what things are, kind of exploring a little more. And like, you're going to have a greater variety of gameplay than if you were to just kind of go through with that casual mode. So anyway, it's fantastic. It's just fantastic. And I can't recommend it enough. I'm really excited to play through it and finish it. And I've been playing it on PC because you can play it on Xbox as well. But I was like, no way, I have to play Monkey Island on PC. That's just like, that's where it belongs. You know what I'm saying?
Or on Switch where it launched.
Well, it launched on everything.
It was exclusive to Switch at first.
Return to Monkey Island is not exclusive to Switch. It's on Game Pass.
It was. It came out originally.
They all came
on
out at
Switch
the same
only.
time.
It was exclusive for like a couple of weeks, honestly.
Okay, a couple of weeks, maybe.
This throwaway joke has become more involved than it was supposed to, but it's true.
Time Nintendo. Okay, sure. Yeah, okay, it was on Switch for a few weeks, was it? That's so
yeah, I mean, the exclusivity
weird.
window was tiny, yeah.
Yeah, that's super weird. I guess it came out, like, that's so funny. A couple days.
Nintendo does what Microsoft don't.
That's weird, man.
For
Because
like
you
months.
can just play it on yeah, that's so weird, dude. I can't imagine, like, hardly anyone would have done that. Goddamn. I don't know. That's so weird. All right, sorry. Anyway, I can't get over that. That's the stupidest timed exclusive I've ever heard of. That's so fucking dumb. Like, if Nintendo paid money for that, they're fucking stupid. Like, I'm just so sorry. That's so fucking stupid, man. Who pays for a month of timed exclusivity? Like, that even matters.
I mean, whether it's a marketing thing, because they did get featured quite heavily in the Direct, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's great for the Return to Monkey Island. Like, listen, no shade on them. Like, for those people, I'm like, yeah, fucking do your thing. Get your money, folks. Making games is hard. I'm just like, Nintendo is so fucking stupid. I'm sorry, I can't.
I like to think that they paid silly money because it was like a big franchise and it was going to be a big win for them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a great game, so like it's good for them to have, but like that's so fucking funny, especially where it's on Game Pass, where it's like anyone who's got a PC or an Xbox is like, fucking wait.
Imagine buying it and then finding out a day later you could have played it for free on Game Pass.
I know.
That'd be brutal.
I'm sorry, yeah. I find this genuinely hilarious. Sorry, all right, we've totally got off the rails here. But anyway, Return to Makyou is great. I'll be talking about it a lot throughout the next little bit because I'm planning on finishing it up. I'm playing Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I'm probably gonna retire it, like I retired Borderlands 3, but that's not because it's like a bad game. It's just like I know what I want from these games. You know what I mean? And it's like I want a little bit of that looter shootery goodness. And then I want to just fuck off. And so I'll probably do that. And again, the game is really fun. I'm sure it'd be way more fun playing it co-op with folks. I don't know if anyone on Xbox wants to play co-op. Sure. But I probably can't be bothered. Do you know what I mean? I just probably can't be bothered. I'm like, I don't think I actually care enough. It's very...
That's the least enthusiastic co-op offer I think I've ever heard. My God.
But I mean, honestly, though, I just don't know if I could care enough. Although I think it has crossplay, maybe, so that actually is kind of cool.
So actually, if you do want to play, no, I'm still not fucked.
Yeah, I'm still not really sure I want to, but it's very funny. I like the setup. I think it's really adorable because like you're playing a D&D campaign basically, right? And I think it is quite funny because like in the opening segment, you're like the new player, and so when you show up in the game, you're all gray, which is great because the guy's like, what? Like the main villain's like, he's not even painted yet. And you're like, yeah, it's the sort of fun of commenting on this. I know, I love it, man. It's great. They really like hone in, and you can tell it's just made by a bunch of nerds, which you're like, fuck yeah, in the best way possible. And I'm like, I love it. So it's very humorous, very fun. It's kind of stupid that there's guns in this. Like, I get it. It's Borderlands, but like you're putting it in this fantasy world, and I was like, you couldn't have made it like more. Like there are some crossbows and stuff which are really fun. But part of me does go kind of like, I feel like you cheaped out a little bit here, you know? Like I know your thing's guns, but you couldn't have bent it a little more to this. Now, to be fair, it's Tiny Tina, so it's like whatever. Katina talks about it sometimes, but you can't help but feel a little bit like the creativity was like not at the full height, right? Now you do have spells and stuff which are really fun, but anyway, it's Borderlands, man. It's nothing different from the other Borderlands. It's fucking Borderlands. Which is great because Borderlands is good, but it's also bad because it's Borderlands and just more of it, right? So take
Borderlands.
That. Borderlands, yeah, exactly. I got it on like a steep discount, and so I feel quite satisfied with what I've got from it so far. But don't expect this to be beaten. The other one that I'm playing is Persona 5 Strikers, because I'm back on my commute again. So I've been playing some Switch on the bus. Jesus Christ, they talk a lot. And like the dialogue's wonderful, and so is the voice acting. So like I can't complain that much, but like I've played a couple hours of this so far, and like I think I've fought for like 20 minutes of those few hours, you know, and you're just like, also, it's not investigating when you make me walk around and press A to listen to conversations. That is not an investigation, god damn it. That is moving from place to place pressing A. I fucking hate when games pretend that that's investigating something. I'm like, no, it's not. You're just making me walk around and press a button. Stop it. Make me actually do something. So anyway, and then like also they're like the moment where it's like, go investigate to learn more. And then you do that, so you think like, oh, I'm gonna go look around these cool environments, but then you get like a text from your bud being like, wait, I think I found something, come to the alley. And you go to the alley and it like fills up more than half of your investigation. You're like, so really I just had to go to your checkpoint, fuck off. Anyway, it's the fighting.
You're right,
though,
you are becoming jaded and cynical.
I'm very jaded and cynical about some of these things. I'm like, don't waste my time. But what I will say, and the reason I'm still playing it and will probably beat the game, is that one, again, the writing is very good. It is just more Persona 5, like in the best way possible. Secondly, the actual combat is very fun. So once you get into the combat, it's great. I just wish I could get into that a little more often. It's kind of Musou style, but like way more stylish. And it combines your like spell abilities and your personas very well. So, and like the boss fights are actually quite fun because of these big friggin' fights, and you still have your all-out attacks. So like they've managed to take everything from Persona 5, but turn it into an action game, which is quite impressive. So overall, I do highly I recommend trying it out. It has Haru in it, which I think is the character added to Persona 5 Royal, and so I'm just kind of like, I don't know who the fuck you are. Isn't she the Persona 5 Royal one?
No, you're thinking of Kasumi, I
No.
think.
Yeah,
Oh,
Kasumi.
was Haru in Persona 5?
Yep, you
Wow,
got her.
I don't remember
Get her
that
like
girl
at the very end.
at
So yeah,
all. Okay.
I
yeah,
haven't even
she's like
played
the most
Persona 5
forgettable
yet, and I know
character in
she's in
that
it.
regard because she's the one with the less screen time, and they try to fix it in Royal from what I heard.
Because I didn't remember her in the slightest. So actually, okay, that's maybe something important then. If you play Royal, this is not a sequel to Royal. This is a sequel to Persona 5.
Because Kasumi's not in it at all, is she? It's a bit of a weird one in terms of the chronology, if I remember rightly.
Well, yeah, because it's the sequel to the game and not Royal. So it's like, yeah. Which is another
Strange.
reason why I'm like, I'm never playing Royal. Of course, if you've never played Persona 5, then yeah, play Royal, duh. But anyway, it's good. That's all. Paula, tell me more about your gacha obsession.
I am not even playing the
Gacha
gacha
tales.
part anymore.
Oh.
I already got the characters that I want. But I am
So they
getting my chance
already gacha.
if
Hey, they already got
they
you.
already got. I already got them. But the thing is that right now I haven't progressed in story much. I am just like farming stuff to build up my second team. I did advance a lot in the tower section of the game, and I'm currently on the 48th floor. The 48th floor is so fucking obtuse that I probably have to go to find a guide or something like that because I cannot find my way out of it. So that's gonna be interesting.
Are they proper dungeons, or is it procedurally generated?
There are proper dungeons.
Okay.
Some of the floors have puzzles, like block puzzles or like switch puzzles or like try to find your way puzzles out of here. And they also have the kind of puzzle where you have to run to the end of the door before the I guess the doors in the dungeon close because you press a switch and then all these blocks lower so you can pass, but you have to pass through all of the blocks before they rise again. So it's more of an obstacle course rather than a puzzle. And then you have the just battle the enemies kind of thing, which is like the easiest because my team is broken right now. For the point of the story, where am I? I am, sorry. And then you have the story, which I haven't made any progress on yet, but I think the next section is a snowfield or a snow mountain or something with snow. And because my boyfriend was playing and I was like, hey, so the next section is a snowy place. Well, this is our next section. And it's like, oh, you already played another one, so I have no idea what that middle ground is. So that middle world, whatever you want to call it, is. I've also made some progress on the watertight tower. Why did I get stuck on this one? Because I haven't made progress on it in a couple of days. Something happened, I got stuck, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna come back later. I never came back, not yet. And yeah, I'm slowly chipping at it. University has been held in the last couple of weeks, so I haven't been playing much. But I did make some progress on some of these other games, like less than an hour of progress on each. So let's go with Poké MMO, which is a multiplayer, a massively online multiplayer experience where you have to load your ROMs, your quote-unquote legally obtained ROMs, and then you can play Pokemon with other people. And we chose to... You can... Right now, you can play the... on Kanto, which is the first gen. You can play on Hoenn, which is the third gen. You can play on, I think, Black and White, which is the fifth gen. And I think you can play also on Platinum, which is the fourth gen. Yeah, I think that's it. And right now they're trying to implement the second gen, which is but the remake of the second gen, which is Heart Gold and Soul Silver. So far, we're having fun with my boyfriend because we're playing together. We're on our way to Brook's Gym, which is the first one. So we're out of here in the forest, we're on Peter City, and we stopped playing because, well, university is a bitch. And
ain't that the truth?
This is a running thing over here because it has been hell, I'm not gonna lie. The other Pokemon game that I'm playing is Pokemon White. Elisa just kicked my ass, so I have to go to the mountains and train my Pokemon because they're like... I have 2 Pokemon that are like the right level for the gym, but both of them are weak to Heremolga, which is a flying squirrel, which is flying and electric. One of my Pokemon is firefighting, and the other Pokemon is water. Emolga is faster, so you can do the math over there. And the other Pokemon that I have that persist, the other Pokemon that is high level enough is a grass fighting. So Emolga makes, I don't know, sashimi. No, not sashimi. Emolga just eats it up because Aerial Ace just makes quadruple damage to it. So not good time. My plan right now is try to pick one of my other Pokemon and level it up a little bit. So I'll probably have to like take out the randomizer code just so I can battle this Audino on the wild, like, because Audino gives you like a lot of experience, and I don't want to be grinding here forever, so I'm just gonna take out the randomizer code, battle some Audinos, and then put the code back in, and nothing happened over here. And that's it for Pokemon White. I'm stuck in fourth gym. I don't even know which gym this is anymore. The other, not Pokemon game, but a monster collecting game that I'm playing is Digimon Story Cybersloop. I got to pick my starter Digimon, which is Terramon, which is an adorable little flashy thing, which I love. I actually only know Digimon from the anime up until like 3rd season of the anime, which is Digimon Tamers. And Terramon was there, and I loved him ever since. And I was so happy that he was able to be one of the starters because, let's be honest, the other 2 options were this mechanic gear thing, and I don't remember the name. I think it was Palmon, which is like this plant/cacti thing from the first Digimon anime. So there wasn't really a choice to be made. Terramon is the overall better starter, not gonna lie. At least look-wise. Let's see how he's on battle, but I'm not too worried right now. And that's it for my progress on Digimon Story Cybersloop. I got my starter, I got my first battle, I wrecked the first battle, and I'm pretty much over with the prologue. So let's see what story is all about on this game. I've been told that this game has translation issues that may or may not affect your enjoyment of the story. And some people said it is the best story ever, and some people said it is a mess story. So let's see what this is all about in probably the next few episodes of the podcast. And finally, I picked up once again Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link on the Nintendo Switch Online service. And I've been trying to make some progress. I actually made some progress and got some spells. And I'm on my way to the second palace still. Is it the second palace or the third palace? Let me check real quick because I got a walkthrough because I am not gonna get all the little hidden secrets without a walkthrough on this game at least. So yeah, for people who don't remember me ever talking about this game because it was so fucking long ago, this is the second game on the Legend of Zelda series, and it is not a top-down adventure like the first one. It is a side-scroller adventure action game, and it is a big departure from the first one because it also has RPG mechanics where you level up your HP, you level up your attack, and you level up your magic. And this is the first game where Link has any kind of magical skills, and I have to say, that magic bar gets drained faster than I can say anything, to be honest. I can, before, and it drains faster than Link can say, hiya, or something like that. Because the spells are very expensive, not gonna lie, especially in the beginning of the game. Like the heal spell drains like more than half of your magic bar, so you have to use it wisely because it is harder to recover your magic than to recover your HP. This game is also hard as well. I also got the I guess it's the down slash or down thrust or however you want to call it. I can now attack enemies from above, which it makes the game so much more manageable because you can't really jump over the enemies, over the taller enemies that are like 2 blocks high, which is about Link's height in this game. But you can just slash them from above and just go past them without any issues. And that just made the game a lot more easier. Not gonna lie, it was a godsend over here. And I want to finish this game. Will I ever finish this game? I don't know. Stay tuned in the next episode, and Rick, take it away, please.
We'll see. So mostly new slate of games for me. So I've played a little bit more of Valkyrie Profile Lenneth. This is a game that you can feel it kind of creaking under you as you're playing. Like the age is there more in the UI and the menu systems than anything else. The art of the game is actually quite good, and for the most part, the levels feel okay. But there's a lot of archaic elements to like the game and the setup and the way things work. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to stick with it, but I'm inclined to keep pushing through because I find the story and the setting interesting, and I do really like the battle system. I started a game called Severed Steel. Friend of the podcast, Uwe, actually recommended it to me today, not knowing I was already playing it. This is a first-person shooter, but with kind of twitch gameplay and slow motion and a lot of acrobatic movement and traversal opportunities, and it's got that sort of die instantly, try again kind of feeling to it. I suppose it kind of defies description. It takes elements from a lot of little things. I suppose in the moment-to-moment gameplay, it most feels like a mashup between like a Super Hot and a Mirror's Edge but with much beefier combat. When you are in motion, doing sort of tricks, whether that's wall runs, dives, slides, wall kicks, various things like that, you are invincible. When you're not doing those things, you are very much a sponge. You have a very generous and very generously refilling slow motion. You, partway through the story, get a cannon that allows you to blow holes in walls, which allows for a lot of really cool sort of emergent gameplay options in terms of traversal and getting from A to B in ways that aren't necessarily prescribed. It's just a really wonderful setup, and the actual playing of it feels superb. This is another one that I played a demo of in one of the Next Fests, and then ended up picking up off the strength of that demo. It's actually improved a lot since the demo. In the demo, it felt very finicky. The way things were set up wasn't entirely clear, and it didn't quite feel like it had the level of polish that it does now in its fully released state. Movement still can have its moments of trickiness. A lot of that is because, as with any first-person sort of parkour-y game, where your character is in relation to where you're facing, in relation to what direction you're moving, can have a number of different options in terms of what you're actually asking the game to do. And although it does a very good job, it doesn't always map exactly to what you're trying to make the system do for you. But on the whole, this is a really, really, really enjoyable game, with more of a story than these games necessarily have, generally speaking, and with quite a unique style. It's like it feels like a halfway house visually between Mirror's Edge, with the clean lines and bright sort of oversaturated tone, and Ghost Runner with the sort of cyberpunky, gritty sensibilities. And it strikes a really nice path all of its own, taking those elements. I really like this. I'm probably going to gush about it more next week when I probably will have beaten it. I started FF7 Remake. I feel very ill-equipped to talk about it because I'm not even past the point of the demo, which I had completed. So I'm literally like 10 minutes in. But I loved the demo, and the game plays exactly like the demo did so far. So I expect I'm going to love this one. Have either of you two played FF7 Remake? I feel like you have, Alex. I feel like you haven't, Paula.
I haven't even played the first, the original.
Oh, I hated the original. I gave up on the original very early because it's way too slow. Yeah, it's not that the original's bad necessarily, but with the pixel art Final Fantasies, they're quite nippy. They don't really hang about too much. With Final Fantasy X and onwards, they're 3D, but they're not encumbered by the move to 3D. I haven't tried 8 or 9 yet, but my feeling with 7 was that it was form over function. The 3D and all the things it did around that slowed the game down, and there wasn't really proper regard given to how much that would slow the game down. It was just like, how amazing can we make this game look within the constraints of what we can do? And, clearly they were in the right and I'm in the wrong because they sold fucking gangbusters. But as a player coming to it, as I did in maybe 2014, it was really rough. But the remake's very, very fluid. It's like a hybrid ARPG active time battle system. The art and the visuals are stunning, even on PS4, where it really does gun beyond what you might expect that platform to be able to handle. The music's excellently reworked, or at least what I've heard of it so far is. I'm really enthusiastic about playing more of this. It's just one that I started and then had a few other things pop up and then didn't carry on with, but I certainly will be. And another one that I'm really massively enthusiastic about is Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which I've owned for a little while, but all the coverage around the sequel, Sparks of Hope, prompted me to finally sort of nudge up the list and start playing it. I expected an XCOM reskin. What I got is actually a very tastefully done interpretation of what Firaxis' XCOM reboot brought to the table for strategy RPGs. So it's the same half full cover system. it's the same your turn, their turn. Overwatch is severely limited, so it's a specific skill that so far only 2 of the characters have, and it's on a cooldown, so you have to be a lot smarter about when you use it. There are 3 characters instead of, I think it was up to... Was it up to 4 or up to 6 in the original? Anyway, it's 3 characters on a map at any one time. It also adds some interesting twists of its own. So there's a mechanic whereby you can move a character onto another character. They will then get sort of a boost, and they'll be able to jump into a further position. Luigi can do that twice off of 2 characters. Mario can land on an enemy and do extra damage. There's a lot of whimsy and flexibility about the setup of this game. Probably skews a little bit easy for the most part, although there are some enemies that can be quite troublesome. But there's a real charm to it all. It's a joy to play. There's lots of fun. There's lots of little collectibles thing. I think the thing that surprised me the most about it was that rather than have like a central hub that you go to after every single combat mission, this plays like a Mario overworld, and the combat encounters are woven seamlessly into the 3D level, I will call it. It's not really an open world per se. There is like a base, and you do go back and forth between it, but not very often. The other thing is there's oodles of content to this. So the original started going very, very cheap with all the bonus stuff thrown in. So there are super challenge combat encounters. There's a whole separate sort of Gaiden Donkey Kong campaign with Donkey Kong, Cranky Kong.
It's very good too.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh, it's just as
playing.
good as the main game, if not a little bit better, because they've refined some stuff within it. So highly recommend.
I did think you might have played it because you were nodding along as I was saying.
Oh, I love this game. It's a fantastic game. The sequel apparently is even better. Yeah, it's just... It's a surprise. It was a surprise when it came out. It remains a surprise to me, but it is a very happy surprise because it is just so wonderful. You're like, I don't know. I remember like everything you're saying is why I was not along, because it was like everything I felt when I played it the first time. I was like, what the fuck is this game? It's great.
I kind of heard that like, oh shit, this is actually quite good. And then it went on a really silly sale when I first got the Switch, and I was like, yeah, I'll get this. I'll get around to it eventually. And I imagine that the sequel will eventually become equally cheap, and I will pick that up and play that as well. It's really, really good. The Rabbids are actually quite likable in this.
Yeah.
So
it's their perfect location for them.
For sure. Like they work within the confines of this game because all of the other characters play it very straight. So they have the foil they need. The fun thing with the story, to the extent that the story matters, is that the not bad guy, but like the MacGuffin of this game, let's call it, can combine 2 items to create a unified item. And when that is inflicted upon the Mushroom Kingdom, various Rabbids are merged with various other aspects of the world. So the first sort of end of world boss is a big sort of beefed up Rabbid with a Donkey Kong tie on it, and it's like Rabbid Kong. And a couple of your party characters are like Rabbids cosplaying in essence as Mushroom Kingdom characters. So I think my favorite so far is Rabbid Peach, because she's like vapid and so self-absorbed, just taking selfies of everything, and it just works. It just really works. Everything about this game works for me, and I'm having a blast. And I'm so glad that this stupid, crazy thing happened, and that it got a sequel. How did this get a sequel? Mental.
I think it sold really well. Like, I think it was one of those games that like did a really good, like, once it came out, I think people realized like this is good, and I think it's done quite well for them. At least I hope so, because it's very fun.
I suppose you think about it, it's got good coverage, because if you're someone that wants an XCOM game on the go, I think when this first came out, the XCOM 2 port wasn't a thing. Although, as I understand it, the XCOM 2 port on Switch is excellent, which doesn't surprise me, because the XCOM 1 port on Vita was equally excellent. You're hitting that child demographic. You're hitting the dozens of Rabbids fans that exist. So, you know, all of your bases.
Honestly, yeah. And even
Yeah.
when XCOM being great, it's like, you know, getting into XCOM is not the easiest thing, right? Like XCOM is punishing in the best ways. Like it's
Sure.
excellent, but it is a tough game, right? And so like I think this game in particular is like it fits such an excellent niche because like I think it's like a fantastic game to get into first
For sure.
before
For
you
sure.
try playing the far more challenging um, XCOM. Anyway, it's fantastic.
Yes. It's an excellent gateway to that genre. I couldn't agree more. And obviously the Mario aspect of that only aids that further.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to talking about this one more as we go through as well. Which takes us onto this week's topic, which is for once topical. So we were talking amongst ourselves about the Pokemon debacle. So for anyone who has somehow missed this, Game Freak just released at the time of recording Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the latest main entry Pokemon titles. Oh boy, are they buggy. The interesting thing is, like, from a purely gameplay standpoint, supposedly they've taken some big steps, and putting performance to one side, these are actually really, really good entries in the franchise. But you can't get around how horrifically bad these perform. Worse even than Arceus. And I think that was the most baffling thing to me. Is just go on.
Yeah, because I was gonna say Arceus's issues were like more like they're things that you can kind of understand. You know what I mean? Like it's stuff where it's like, oh, the draw distances aren't great. Like there weren't necessarily like huge crazy bugs per se. Like there are some, sure, but it was more just you're like, it doesn't look awesome at times, and like things like this where you're like, there. It sucks that it's happening, but like it was almost a little more forgivable, right? Like you could kind of ignore them. Like you could play the game and be like, oh, whatever, right? You can just totally ignore it. I think with this one, it's like there are memory leak issues, right? Where like some players have to restart their game every few hours. Like there are critical system failures within this game that are like literally inexcusable for, and let's remember, the single most profitable franchise on the planet. Like it is Pokemon makes the most money in the fucking world. So like when people try to say stuff like, oh, I'm like, fuck you. They have the money to make this game incredible. But they don't, right? They like don't clearly funnel enough money or time into it because they're in this fucking pipeline of like having to churn it out every year because they have all these other products that rely on the new Pokemon that come out. And it's like Pokemon is the most disgustingly capitalistic thing I think I've seen in video games in so long. And yet I still love it so much because that's how good they are with this shit.
And this is the interesting one because it's clearly like bad coding in a big sense. And that's definitely how I felt. But then you see people running it on emulators on pretty low powered PC specs and it runs fine and it works fine. And for the most part, it is fine. And then you think, well, to what extent is it bad coding? And to what extent is it that the Switch was an underpowered Android tablet with detachable controllers at launch, and now 5 or 6 years have gone past, and it's still an underpowered tablet from 6 years ago.
I know. And you know what makes me kind of terrified with this is that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet broke sales records for
they did.
In 3 days. It has sold an absurd, and like I haven't bought it, and this is actually maybe the first Pokemon game in a while where I'm not gonna get it. Like I actually, I got Arceus and I enjoyed it. I never beat it, but this game sold 10 million copies in 3 days. Now the other thing though is that Nintendo opened up refunds for this game, which is
damn, I missed that.
Yes, which is very rare. I mean, this is one of like the first times since like basically Cyberpunk that we've had like news of like opening up specific returns for the game. Because they had to just admit that it's not
Shit's
properly
broken.
functioning. Yeah, like
Yeah.
and they've actually been able to get those refunds, which I think is honestly kind of telling. And they're the worst reviewed main series Pokemon games in the series history, which I think is interesting because you can see this a couple different ways, right? Like, they're not being maligned for their actual content, right? Like, I think what I've seen from reviews is that people are like, hey, we like what you've done here, but we can't ignore the fact that this thing is fucking broken. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like
Yeah, for
every
sure.
year, right? Like last year or 2 years ago, was it only 2 years ago when the last Pokemon came out? Or was it 3 years ago?
Arceus was
Oh,
Arceus
I
2
was
years ago.
no, sorry, I was thinking of the mainline series.
Sword and Shield. No, that was like 3 or
3
4 years ago, I
years.
think.
3 years.
3
Okay.
years.
God.
But by the sounds of it, the Arceus team was mostly the team that then went on to do Scarlet and Violet, so it was a real truncated schedule.
Yeah, Arceus came out this year in January,
It did.
wasn't it?
It was in
Oh
January.
shit, you're right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was really recent.
Yeah.
Man.
Right?
Mm.
Like,
And
was
the mad
not
thing
long
is, I remember
ago.
the discourse was like, well, Arceus is an interesting first attempt. God damn, what are they going to do with Scarlet and Violet building upon this? Or whatever the next one was going to be. And I do wonder in terms of sales, obviously the money men aren't necessarily going to see it this way, but how much of it was just goodwill built from Arceus? And actually, in terms of the sales hit, are you going to maybe see that next time?
But see, this is what and this is what I think is going to happen here. They released a game that is quite broken. They broke sales records, and likely any returns that are made are probably in the vast minority, because realistically,
yeah,
it's
for sure.
difficult to
Yeah.
return a game and it takes a lot. I think if you're the money motherfuckers, what they're seeing here is, oh, we're fine. We can release games that are kind of busted as long as it's fairly fun. No problem. And I
It's an industry
feel
trend, yeah.
right? And I just think it's getting worse because remember, Sword and Shield were kind of busted too when they came out, right? Like, and not to this extent though. They had a lot of graphical errors and a lot of technical issues within them, but they weren't even as bad. And now it's just like the trend is just going downward. It's like every Pokemon release is just getting technically more fucked as it comes out, and I'm like, what the hell is going on, right? Like,
It's not just Pokemon. We see it everywhere. You can release now, fix later. You know, as long as you have a roadmap, you're fine, sort of thing.
but they
And
don't even. Do they even
unfortunately,
have a roadmap for this? Sorry.
no, I'm just
They do
making a
not.
joke. But it wouldn't surprise me. They have got bikes now, so. But
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me that they don't even try to fix this, because
no.
for Pokemon Sword and Shield, they didn't address the graphical bugs or like performance issues that were there. They only tried to release a better product for the DLC. Remember, those games have DLC. And the reason they did DLC instead of the release, it was because it was, one, more cost efficient, and two, because it supposedly gave them more time to develop the next game once they finish the DLC, because it takes less time to do the DLC than to make an entire new game. And
which makes sense, but
then, yeah, but they're doing things to make the next game like having more time to develop the next game, and then they release this, which, as we stated, is absolutely broken. Like, I've seen anything from a Pokemon like picking up colors from the other Pokemon in the party, to for the crocodile starter sinking the water during battle, because I don't know, they didn't do they didn't fix him to the specific point in the ground, so it began to slide and slide and slide, and whoop, he sunk in the water. There was another bug where the trainers, or like the characters, the NPCs, can just walk into the Pokemon battle because there isn't like a separate a scene. It's just the same scene. And there was this NPC just walking by in the middle of the two Pokemon battling, and he just went away. And the more serious one is the memory leak that happens that makes your game run slower and slower until you turn it off. So, was this game play tested at all? That's the question.
But
Well,
then I
and they
suppose it comes back to is this hardware, because apparently Bayonetta 3 had similar memory leak things. It's something I've heard just being a Switch problem as much as it's been a individual game problem. There's quite a lot of games that anecdotally you read that if you restart your Switch and then start playing again, performance will improve.
yeah. Well, this is again, yeah, this is that
Yeah.
issue, and like I've talked about this we've talked about this a few times, but like I don't know, you hear defenders of it being like, oh, like, well, it's fine, it's not designed for this, and you're like, but it's just like the industry is moving on too much, right? And like
Yeah.
at this point now, games that are specifically designed for it fucking suck, and it's like right? Because Bayonetta 3 is like apparently one of the best action games out in ages. Like apparently it's extremely fun, but then it's just like why allow it to be hampered by this console, right? Like and I'm not even
Yeah.
saying like I don't care. I don't even really care about what they look like, right? Like graphics and
Up to a
whatnot
point,
obviously
yeah.
are important to a degree, right? But as long as there's like an art style there and whatever, that's fine. But it's like when your systems are starting to like struggle, that's where you're at the point where it's like, okay, like we gotta have some hard conversations here because like this shit's getting a little
Yeah.
rough.
Having said all of that, I think the nail in the coffin is that at launch, Breath of the Wild ran on that console.
Mhm.
I think it's
Yeah.
inconceivable that you can say there's anything other than a failure of development or a failure, of a development cycle on the whole that causes a game like this to come out in a state like this. The hardware is the hardware. I think we all recognize that. I think even Nintendo would recognize that. Hardware power has never really been what they've aimed for, but the reality is that this is just a shoddy development job.
Yeah, and like
overall.
they haven't adapted to the fact that it's like they're honestly, it feels like they're trying to put these out at the pace that they put out 2D Pokemon. And it's like, listen, motherfuckers, you're not putting out 2D Pokemon
You
anymore.
cannot do that.
Nope.
Yeah, these are 3D games.
Unless they really
man.
want to.
You need
I mean, they
more
could.
goddamn time. Yeah, I know, right? You could pour a lot more resources into it and potentially do that. But even then, I also think though there is an upper limit to how much you can get done in a certain amount of time, right? You can pour all the money in the world into a project, but the reality is these are pieces of art, right? They're creating entertainment, and like ultimately, I don't care how many people you throw onto it. This stuff takes time, right? It just does. And it's
Albeit
complicated.
it would help if they did throw some people at it. I gather that
Yes.
the team at Game Freak isn't that big to start with, and that is part of the problem.
Which I think is wild. And that's probably a larger Japan issue too, right? With like their game development
Maybe,
ethos and
yeah.
concept. But it's like, I don't know. It's crazy to me because I can't imagine. I'm no business folk. But I can't imagine they would lose much revenue at all if they even had a year more space between these games. Like the amount that Pokemon makes outside of these games is absurd. Like they have more than enough that they're making. These are some of the best-selling games of all time, right? Like it's not even like
Yep.
and then also like yeah, because I think franchise-wise it is the most like up there as like the largest selling one. So anyway, it baffles me entirely how they keep doing this and how it's like seen as Jesus. Anyway.
I think we've hit everything on that. Has anyone else got anything to throw on the heap with the whole Pokemon thing?
I mean, I could talk about the science, but this is not like the thing we are talking about right now. So I can cheat on this game for hours on end. Let's be honest, and I haven't even played it.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe someday, if someone like lends me a copy or something, I might try it out and see how it goes. Because again, I have heard it's fun, but like I don't think I'm gonna touch this. I might do the Cyberpunk thing. If they ever fix it, maybe I'll come try it. Because when I came back to Cyberpunk, I had a great time. because it was fixed. But I also just don't think they're gonna do that, because I think they release this and then they're like, moving on to the next thing. Like they're not like I don't feel like they have a dedicated team like fixing shit up. They're like, get ready, start working on the DLC. So like smoking like fucking 20 packs of cigs a day. Anyway, let's why don't we move on to everybody's favorite game? How long to beat the game? I think it's my turn because we're doing a whole new round.
Correct, Monday.
Because Rick won last time around. So let's see here. Let's randomize this bad boy. No, let's see here. That one's. Oh, this is a great one. Total War Shogun 2 for the PC. Yeah. The Total War games are very fun and very wild.
Is the Shogun like a specific spin-off of them, the same as like Total War Warhammer is?
I don't really know how to answer.
Sick. Okay,
I mean, I think, I don't know. Total War is just all Total War. You know what I mean? Like they're just different time periods. Like I don't think there's a main series of it, right? It's just Total War, and then whatever subgenre: Rome, Napoleon, Shogun, Warhammer. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's just like they're all Total War. Yeah, like they're all Total War. Just some of them have different things to it. I don't know.
I've got the first fucking clue.
I think this would be fun. So I'm gonna
You're gonna.
I'm trying to decide what my extra, because there was one that I think is interesting, but yeah. Okay, so on How Long to Beat, there is additional content for this game. I want you to tell me how many additional content is measured on this game, just for on How Long to Beat. So not actually the official additional content, but just how much of it is registered on How Long to Beat.
Okay.
Any fucking different armor sets and color palettes won't be included.
No, probably not. Although I don't know.
Yeah, you can't really comment, can you? Yeah.
Is that too easy to find out? I'm just doing the Wikipedia just to see if this information is like easily found. You know what? That one might be too easy.
So you're gonna change it?
Yeah, give me the percentage of retirements actually, because I think that's interesting.
Ooh.
Just so you know, there's only 3 additional content on here. I just think it's too low. The Battle of Kawagao, Total War Shogun 2, Fall of the Samurai, and Rise of the Samurai. Oh, well, Fall and Rise. There you go. But I prefer the retirements because I think it's an interesting numero.
See, I'm torn on retirements. So on the one hand, I feel like this is the kind of game for which there would be a high attrition rate. But on the other hand, if you're playing this game, you probably know what you signed up for. Shit. Oh, that is a rough one.
Let's see. Oh, I just saw your extras thing. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, sorry, I'm editing it now to be.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't see it before I changed it, but
that's fine. I was spot on. Let the record show I was spot on.
You were spot on, so that's good. That's good.
So I'm about to get cheated out of 2 points.
I was thinking that I actually seen the times for another Total War game.
I don't know.
I think it was the Warhammer one.
Oh yeah, I don't know how close Total War games are in terms of their time. I feel like they're probably very, very like I don't know. I could imagine them being pretty varied.
My times are in. I don't want to think about it anymore. It's pure shots in the
Come on, Paula.
There you go.
Get them in there. All right, you got your
There you go.
You got your retirement in there too? Okay, beautiful. So here we go. All right, so let me just pull up both of your thingamajiggies here. All right, so Paula has said for main time 26 hours, and Rick has said 32 hours. The actual time is 26 and a half hours.
Okay.
So that one's going to go to Paula. That was a close one, though. Let's see here. Main plus, Rick has said 53 hours, and Paula has said 50 hours. But the time is 55 and a half hours. So that's 1-1. Rick's got one, Paula's got one.
Don't do
that. And all right, here we go. 100%. Rick has said 85 hours, and Paula has said 120 hours.
I've undershot it.
You're both way off. It's 181 hours, but Paula is closest.
Me.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Again, I don't know how you even quantify those, because with Total War games, I'm not even sure what counts as 100%. But for
That's
retirement,
comments down below.
Yeah, for retirement, Paula has said 7%, and Rick has said 15%. The actual retirement is 12.5%. Pretty high. So that's going to be 2 points to Rick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do retirements, because I was like, that's actually the highest I've seen in a long time, which makes sense because, again, this isn't really a game that you necessarily complete, right? This is kind of a game you play and retire.
I think for me, it's attrition. I feel like these are unbalanced just games that a lot of people will try and just go, nope.
Yes, exactly. And so the final scores here, Rick is at 3 and Paula's at 2. So that's a pretty close call for this round right now. Still,
it's a narrow start.
Yeah, very narrow. All right, well, that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
Bye.